let me play this video first, and then we're going to get into it. Make sure you hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications.
President Trump setting his sights on Nigeria. In multiple social media posts, Trump accused Nigeria's government of allowing the killing of Christians and...
Hold on. Hey, why they low-key put the black man on this particular segment? Why they ain't let the white man do it? Why they put the black man on this segment? Why they ain't let the white man do this one? They gonna let him do the anchor for the news live weekend on this particular issue. Okay, I see you.
The U.S. may, quote, go into the West African country and, quote, wipe out Islamic terrorists he says are responsible for horrible atrocities. He says that he's instructed the Pentagon to prepare for possible action. Meantime, Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu says religious freedom and tolerance are core...
I told you they all named Ubuntu over there. I told you they was all named Ubuntu. President Naheem Azurah, what's his name? Let me see what his name is.
Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu says...
I told you, man, they all name Ubuntu over there.
Religious freedom and tolerance are core tenets of Nigeria's collective identity and will remain so. He also said his administration is committed to working with the U.S. government to protect communities of all faiths. For more on this, I'm joined by Atlantic staff writer Graham Wood, who has reported extensively in Nigeria. Graham, thank you so much for joining me here today. Now, Nigeria is nearly evenly split between Christians and Muslims. Is there any credibility to President Trump's claim that Christianity faces an existential threat there?
No, that would be news to the 100 million plus Christians who are living full and happy lives in Nigeria. But it is true that Boko Haram and other Islamist groups have created a hellish atmosphere for Christians and for Muslims who are under their territory. So the idea that Christians are persecuted, not false, but a lot of other people are too. The Boko Haram's a group that's part of the Islamic State, and if you remember from when the Islamic State was a going concern in Syria a couple of years ago, they were very, very, very harsh against fellow Muslims as well. So this is a very messy situation, and it certainly doesn't rise to the level of possibly extinguishing Christianity in Nigeria.
Now, in terms of that situation, Amnesty International calls the violence in Nigeria a humanitarian crisis. Do we know who's responsible and who the victims typically are?
Yeah, so this group Boko Haram has been around for 25 years or so, and it's gotten more ideological and quite violent over the years. Since 2009, when its leader was killed, they've started to, the group's name means books are forbidden. So like Western education is forbidden, which gives you a sense of the type of real law that they would like to inflict on everybody. That group has been displacing millions of people in Nigeria. So when we're talking about the death toll, we're talking about people who have had to flee their homes and who have suffered from disease as well as direct violence from that group.
Now, you've reported extensively.
So basically what's happening is Trump is saying that he wants to, or he's warning Nigeria, okay? This is what's basically happening. See, the one thing about Trump is that he pays attention to what's going on everywhere. He pays attention to the things that's going on everywhere. And he's been warning them. And he said, listen, y'all gonna have to get it together, because the one thing that we're not gonna do is we're not going to have a persecution against Christians. Now, this is a warning. This is a warning. All right. Now, there's conflicting stories, because I see people in the chat saying they lying. It's been a humanitarian crisis, that they've been persecuted over there for a long time, that they've been putting this out there. And so I need to find out what the truth is. And in order for me to do that, I need to go to both spaces.
An urgent message from President Trump demanding Nigeria stop the brutal murders of thousands of Christians in the country or face possible action from the Pentagon. He posted in part, quote, the USA will immediately stop all aid and assistance to Nigeria and may very well go into that now disgraced country guns a-blazing to completely wipe out the Islamic terrorists who are committing these horrible atrocities. Paul Adamu is a Nigerian Christian who was kidnapped by Boko Haram 2 years ago. He joins us now.
How is Boko Haram still out there doing these type of things after all of this time? So y'all basically telling me that Boko Haram is Idris Elba in that one movie.
It's so wonderful to have you on the show. Please tell us what happened to you.
It was such a disheartening situation. 2 years ago, I was kidnapped by the dreaded Boko Haram along my way to the airport while I was traveling to Cameroon to meet some of my colleagues, and then I got kidnapped.
What's the name of that movie that Idris Elba was the leader in? Somebody in the chat tell me what the name of that movie was.
And you were held for how long?
Beast of No Nation. Yeah, I think that's what it was called.
Okay. And there are many people, especially young girls, who have been kidnapped by Boko Haram, put into forced marriages, forced conversions. They're still in captivity. The situation there is quite dire. You heard what President Trump has said. Here's what Nigeria's president has said in response. He said that the characterization of Nigeria as religiously intolerant does not reflect our national reality, nor does it take into consideration the consistent and sincere efforts of the government to safeguard freedom of religion and beliefs for all Nigerians. What's your message? What's it like to be a Christian in Nigeria?
First, I want to thank and applaud the United States of American President Donald Trump for designating Nigeria as a CPC, because
everybody loves Trump. Everybody outside of the United States of America, unless you're a terrorist, loves Trump. Trump has been warning and getting stuff together, stopping wars, stopping genocides. And so world leaders don't pay attention to stuff that happens outside of their purview unless it's conducive for them. They don't pay attention to what's happening in the Congo. They don't pay attention to what's happening in Nigeria. They don't pay attention to any of this type of stuff. And so when Trump finally addresses it, because let's be clear, y'all like to say that he racist, but he always stand 10 toes down with doing the right thing. When Trump finally addresses it, everybody want to act like, oh man, I bet you one thing that would never happen. Because see, I seen Kamala Harris on her interview said that she met with world leaders from almost every single nation. They never, ever, ever addressed all of the genocide and all of the warring that's happening over in these places like Nigeria and Haiti and the Congo, where they getting their arms chopped off. Now, let's be clear. You know, I got to state my position on this, and I'm going to state it very clearly. I am not a fan of anything that's booty scratching. I don't do no booty scratching. That's what we used to call it when we were children. I'm not a big fan of booty scratching. However, I think it's an atrocity. Sudan, yes, correct. Out in Sudan, I'm no fan of it, but I know when the media is suppressing it, and they out there taking girls, and they raping them, and they giving them diseases or any of that type, and all of that stuff. That's what they used to call them in school. That's all I know about. Oh my God. You so stupid. You stupid. You stupid. You stupid. You African booty scratcher. That's what they used to say in school. I didn't agree with it. But I knew that it happened. I didn't agree with it, but I knew that it happened. You know? So we can't act like it's not a thing. It's always been a thing. And Trump is saying, listen, we tired of y'all doing what y'all want to do, and y'all need to get on point with the rest of the world. Why is it so much warring over in y'all countries? And stop blaming everybody else for y'all warring in y'all countries. It's not everybody else, it's you.
President Trump is leaving open the possibility of U.S. military action in Nigeria as he accused the nation of not stemming violence against Christians there. The president has asked the Defense Department to prepare options, that
Did I ever say anything about a booty scratcher? No, I didn't need to. That was the girls that was always saying that type of stuff to the Africans I was in school. It was always the girls. It wasn't the guys. The guys didn't care. Like the guys was chilling. It was the girls that always said disrespectful, egregious things to the Nigerians and the Jamaicans and the Africans.
Include troops on the ground or airstrikes. The situation on the ground, however, is far from straightforward. Violence in Nigeria does affect Christians, but also Muslims, and is driven by religious, ethnic, and resource-based tensions in that country. Joining me now, Fareed Zakaria, host of Fareed Zakaria GPS on CNN. He also has a new book, Age of Revolutions, releases in paperback tomorrow. Make sure to get your copy. There always, Fareed, you're so good at just making us understand what's happening globally. Let's talk about what's happening with Trump in Nigeria. He's suddenly suggesting potentially putting troops on the ground or airstrikes. He's already threatened strikes inside Venezuela, and we've been seeing the multitude of strikes on boats in international waters, killing more than a dozen people. For a guy who is insisting he deserves a Nobel Peace Prize for stopping wars, how do you read what's happening now?
It seems very impulsive and emotional. He possibly saw something on TV. It is very strange. The Nigerian situation is exactly as you said, Sarah, very complicated. A lot of the violence people have heard about in Nigeria, Boko Haram, that terror group that took those school children, we all remember. That was mostly Muslim on Muslim violence. Those are jihadi groups often taking, killing Muslims, not in all cases, but in many of them. There is Muslim Christian violence, as you say, some of it is based on farmers versus goat herders. The current president, Tinubu, has actually been trying his best to diffuse that kind of violence and is himself an exemplary example of Nigeria's kind of multi-religious tradition. He is Muslim, the president of Nigeria. He's married to a Christian woman who is an ordained minister. And he often talks about how that marriage is part of what he's trying to do. Nigeria is 50% Christian, 50% Muslim. So it's an odd place for President Trump to interject himself, particularly militarily. I suspect, like many of President Trump's, emotional outbursts, that will not actually lead to military action. That could set off a kind of tinderbox in Nigeria, but we just have to wait and see with President Trump. It's often you're trying to mind read this one man.
Yeah, and that can be quite difficult. I do want to talk to you about what President Trump, what he told 60 Minutes, particularly when it comes to those nuclear tests that he is talking about doing after some more than 30 years where these tests just have not happened. Let me let you listen to what he told Norah O'Donnell.
So why do we need to test our nuclear weapons?
Well, because you have to see how they work. You do have to. And the reason I'm saying testing is because Russia announced that they were going to be doing a test. If you notice, North Korea is testing constantly. Other countries are testing. We're the only country that doesn't test, and I don't want to be the only country that doesn't test.
I was surprised to hear him say, we have to see how they work. We know how they work. We were the one that used them on Japan. But if the U.S. starts blowing off nuclear weapons, is this going to start a chain reaction with Russia? And
Is she talking about Hiroshima? What was that? 1945? What was that? That was 70. How long ago was that? That was 1945. Is she serious?
China following suit?
It almost certainly will. I'm not sure, some of this is classified information and we don't have access to it. But conventionally, it's believed that Russia and China and mostly everyone stopped in the mid-1990s. North Korea is the exception. But the major nuclear powers have tended to believe that they can figure out whether or not these weapons work without doing these underground tests, that have all kinds of environmental issues. It also it kind of has the tendency to trigger more of an arms race. But look, I think I know where President Trump is coming from on this issue. He wants leverage in these negotiations that we should be engaging in with the Russians and the Chinese. The big nuclear fact that we need to come to terms with is that China is on track to, I think, roughly quadruple the number of nuclear weapons it has over the next 10 years. That is a huge shift in the nuclear balance of power, and we should be trying to engage them in terms of negotiations and arms control. And if you need some leverage in that area, I'm not entirely opposed to it.
They hate every single thing that Trump is doing, including trying to fix Nigeria. Make sure you guys hit a like for the algorithm, subscribe to the channel, and turn on your notifications.